this is Callie from Mythical Type Zines. I wanted to show you my process for how I make mini zines, from how I go from initial idea through to the finished zine. So this is my most recent zine. It's called Modern Day Sisyphus, 21st Century Tasks That Never Go Away. I made this as part of the Sunscreen Zine Exchange, which is happening a little later this summer. So you can check them out on Instagram at Sunscreen Zines. Because this is part of the exchange, it's not in my Etsy shop yet, but it will be later on this summer. So I wanted to show you my process for how I go from initial idea to a finished zine like this. I always start with a list. Sometimes this is in my phone, but when I actually want to start working on the zine, I will move to paper. So this is just a standard 3x5 inch index card. And I make a bullet point list here to get my idea down on paper. I use a small piece of paper or an index card on purpose because it forces me to just get the idea down simply without trying to actually write the zine at this point. So that's why it's limited space, so I just have room for the idea in like bullet points, but not to actually write out the zine. So this is based on Sisyphus, which is from Greek mythology. It was a man who was punished by having to roll a boulder up a mountain, and every time the boulder gets close to the top, it rolls right back down, and he has to start over. So the idea is tasks that are repetitive, you have to do over and over again. So for example, I've got a lot of them are like house chores, washing dishes, doing laundry, dusting, vacuuming. I wanted to end the zine on a more positive note, so at the end I have some like positive things that you repeat, like saying goodnight to loved ones, having holiday traditions, making a cup of coffee. But that's the whole gist for the zine, just on one small piece of paper. From here, I move to a notebook, and that's where I'm doing more planning. So I use this large notebook, which is really nice because I can fit the 8 pages of a mini zine onto one piece of paper, so I can see everything all together. So at the top, I'll write the title for the zine. Sometimes I end up writing the title at the end because I don't know what I'm going to call the zine at the beginning sometimes, but that goes right up here. If I know how I'm going to print it or how I'm going to make it at this point, I'll make notes here. So I have printed in black on purple paper, hand-drawn illustrations type text. Then I make a rectangle like this for every page in the zine. So front cover, page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the back cover. And at this point, I'm still planning what the pages look like. So this is more about seeing where the text is going to be on each page and where the illustrations are going to be. But it's not necessarily writing the zine word for word. So for example, here on page 1, I have summary of myth. So I wanted to write a summary of the story of Sisyphus in case people are not familiar with it. That way they have the context directly in the zine. So for my notes, I just wrote summary of myth, but I didn't actually write it here. When I was working on the zine on the computers, when I actually wrote out those paragraphs there. Then for these other pages, even though there is writing here, I'm not trying to like, this is the actual draft word for word what the zine is going to be. It's more about just seeing how much space I have to work with. Same with the illustrations. It's just understanding they're going to be at the bottom, so the text will be at the top of most pages. And then at the end, I usually use the last page as a thank you, and I put links to my work, but I just put a note there for myself. So this thank you page turns into that. So this notebook gives me that overall plan for how I'm going to make the zine. Then I made it in Canva, which is free graphic design software. So if you imagine this is a computer screen, in Canva I make a design that's 8.5 by 11 inches landscape. That way it would fit on standard computer paper. And then I have guidelines in the program so I know where the pages are on, like, so I'll split it in half this way and then do 4 columns. And then the way I lay out my zines, the bottom left is the back cover, front cover, page 1, page 2, page 3 goes upside down, the top row is upside down relative to the bottom row. So page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I wrote all the text for the zine. I'm primarily a writer and drawing comes second to me. It's not as easy. So I always start with words when I do the zines that I make, and then I'll take care of pictures later. So I did all the writing first. and I could like place it where I wanted, but this was before the drawings were in, so I kind of took guesses where I wanted the text. Then to make these illustrations, I used just regular printer paper to draw the mountains, and this was just with a black brush pen. I used this pen, and it's actually running out of ink, but that worked out well because I could get this texture on the mountain, like from the brush tip. So I made 2 versions of the mountain like that. I photocopied these each like 3 or 4 times. That way I could have the same mountain and have the boulder and Sisyphus at different locations on the mountain. So I photocopied these, and then I had mountains that I could draw Sisyphus and the boulder here on different locations. So the idea is when he gets near the top, he has to move back down to the bottom. I actually made like 8 of these until I found like 4 that I liked. So to draw the boulder and Sisyphus, I just used a fine liner. This is the Faber-Castell with a fine tip, but you could use any kind of black pen or marker for that. So then I scanned these in to my computer as images, and then I could import them into Canva. So I had these 4 that were scanned in, and I purposely made them to be about the size of a spread in the zine. That way I wouldn't have to do much resizing. So when I put these into Canva, I could just drop them onto the pages I wanted them to be on. And if I needed to make them a little smaller, I could. And then I printed out a test copy on white paper just like this. And I trimmed off the edges here, and then I folded up the zine to see how it looked. I had to adjust some spacing with the text because when I actually saw it folded up, I saw like I wanted to move some of it. On some pages, like this black edge came over to the page next to it, so I adjusted that. And then when I got a test copy that I liked where everything was, I printed it on purple. If you've made this kind of zine before, you're familiar with how they fold up, so it looks like that. Then you fold and cut, and then that's the finished zine. So like I mentioned, this is part of a zine exchange for this summer, so it's not in my Etsy shop yet, but it will be probably in August. So please let me know in the comments if you have any questions about making zines, if you have any questions about my process, and I'll get back to you. Thanks so much for watching.